Shadows dance. Steel screams. Rain screams. Berlin. A night without hope. In an archive room located deep underground, a flickering oil lamp performs its final dance before being devoured by the darkness. Dust flies in the air, as thick as forgotten souls trying to retell their stories. On the scratched oak tabletop, a file lies there. Cold. Silent. A bright red seal is pressed onto the yellowed paper. Strictly confidential. Top secret. Each page turns open. A name emerges from the abyss of memory. Dirlewanger. Most war stories speak of honor, of sacrifice, or at least of some distorted ideal. But this file is different. It contains nothing but the smell of dried blood and rusted gunpowder. This is not a story about ordinary soldiers. This is a file about a brigade of ghosts, those summoned from the deepest levels of the hell of human society. A unit that even those who engineered the Holocaust would shudder to mention. Look at that black and white photo. Deep-set eyes. The smile of a predator. Oskar Dirlewanger. By all rules of civilization, he should have died in a dark alley or rotted in a solitary cell. He was a convicted sex offender. A violent alcoholic. A man stripped of all military rank, stripped of his doctoral degree, and thrown out of society like a piece of human waste. But, in the insane war machine of the Third Reich, waste became a resource. This is the greatest noir mystery of history. How could a man with no humanity left, a criminal unable to follow any rules, be given the power to lead an army of monsters? How did a rejected murderer become the chief architect of the horror at Warsaw? Today, we are not watching an ordinary war documentary. We are stepping down into a black hole of history. Welcome back to the Noir Archive. Today, we open the file on the Butcher of Warsaw. History does not begin with headlines. It begins in the darkness. The year 1914. Europe burns. Young men rush into the trenches with smiles on their faces and faith in glory. Among them was Oskar Dirlewanger, an infantryman of the 123rd Grenadier Regiment. He fought bravely. He was wounded 6 times. He received the Iron Cross first and second class. In theory, Oskar was a war hero. But glory in the trenches is a poison. For some, war is a tragedy. For Oskar, it was a release. The sound of artillery did not frighten him, it awakened something that had been lying dormant in his soul. A craving for unlimited violence. The war ended. The empire collapsed. Germany fell into a black hole of inflation, poverty, and the collapse of national self-esteem. This was the era of the Weimar Republic, a stage of broken dreams and madmen. Amidst that chaos, Oskar Dirlewanger appeared with a new face. He went to school. He studied political science. In 1922, he received a doctorate from the University of Frankfurt. Dr. Dirlewanger. A scholar. An intellectual. A man of words and ideas. But the doctoral degree was only a mask. The polished layer of the academic degree could not hide the stench of the decay within. He did not use knowledge to build society. He used it to worm his way into the darkest corners of power. The investigation file begins to thicken from here. Look at the indictments of 1934. The letters on these pages do not speak of politics, they speak of pathology. Heilbronn, Germany. Oskar was arrested. Charge: sexual assault of a young girl belonging to the Hitler Youth. Accompanying that were allegations of embezzlement of public funds and theft. A doctor, a veteran member of the Nazi Party, yet a child predator. Society spurned him. The Nazi Party, which at that time was striving to build an image of purity and morality, threw him to the margins. He was stripped of his doctorate. He was stripped of his military rank. He was thrown into prison. By this point, Oskar Dirlewanger's life should have ended in disgrace. He had hit rock bottom. He was a defective product of the system. The court records were all too clear. He was a predator. He was a sex offender. He was an irredeemable alcoholic. But as darkness enveloped Germany, the rules changed. When Hitler's war machine began to move, the standards of human were erased. The rising Nazi party was not looking for saints. They were looking for tools. And in the underground world of the SS, people began to realize a cruel truth. The filthiest jobs needed the filthiest hands. They did not need a model soldier. Instead, they saw in Oskar a weapon. A demon who knew no compassion. A man who could do things that a human with a conscience would never dare to think of. And that was when Gottlob Berger appeared. Berger was not just a high-ranking SS officer. He was the architect of the Waffen-SS, the right hand of Himmler. And more importantly, he was an old friend of Oskar from the World War I era. Between the two of them existed a strange friendship, a connection forged from the mud of the trenches and a contempt for ordinary moral rules. What did Berger see in a criminal just out of prison? He saw an opportunity. Berger believed that Oskar's violence was not a defect, but a valuable asset if placed in the right spot. He sponsored Oskar. He wiped the stain from the record. He sent Oskar to Spain during the Civil War to be tested by fire in the Condor Legion. That was not a restoration of dignity. It was an optimization of the demon. In Spain, Oskar learned how to destroy an enemy without a uniform, how to suppress civilians, and how to turn fear into an effective weapon of war. When Oskar returned to Germany, he was no longer the bedraggled prisoner of 1934. He had been washed clean by the system with blood. Berger convinced Himmler that to deal with partisans, to clean up undesirable lands, we need those who have nothing to lose. We need those who treat death and brutality as a joke. The bond between Berger and Dirlewanger was a dark symbiosis. One provided power, one provided brutality. One was the brain of the system, one was its blade. The system did not just accept Oskar, it nurtured him. It provided him with a unit, a symbol, and a promise. Do what you want, as long as you bring back results. History often records that Nazi Germany was a machine of precision and discipline. But the existence of Oskar Dirlewanger proved the opposite. At the center of that machine was a moral vacuum, where people like Oskar were honored. The clues have been right before our eyes. A doctor of political science and a serial killer. Two people, one body. As the light of the Weimar civilization died out, Dirlewanger's darkness began to stretch long. He was no longer an individual. He had become a symbol for the degradation of an entire nation. But the existence of Oskar Dirlewanger proved the opposite. At the center of that machine was a moral vacuum, where people like Oskar were honored. The clues have been right before our eyes. A doctor of political science and a serial killer. Two people, one body. As the light of the Weimar civilization died out, Dirlewanger's darkness began to stretch long. He was no longer an individual. He had become a symbol for the degradation of an entire nation. But amidst those prison blocks filled with the smell of death, a dark experiment began to take shape. A mad idea sprouted in Heinrich Himmler's head, nurtured by the patronage of Gottlob Berger. Why waste criminals in dungeons when we can turn them into blades stabbing into the heart of the enemy? Initially, the name sounded professional. Wildia Kommando Oranienburg Poacher Command. Their theory was very simple, even seemingly logical in a cruel way. Poachers are those who know how to hide in the deep forest, how to set traps, and how to move without leaving a trace. They are masters of the terrain. If the regular army, the Wehrmacht, failed in pursuing partisans in the old forests of the East, then let the professional illegal hunters do it. Archive records show the first round of recruitment, 80 men. All were convicted poachers. They were promised one thing only: freedom. In return, they had to serve under a man they had never met face to face, but whose shadow had covered this prison for a long time. Oskar Dirlewanger. But, This is when the investigation touches the gruesome truth. The original plan about the poachers quickly became a clumsy lie. Within just a few months, the recruitment funnel began to expand to an insane degree. Himmler and Berger realized they did not just need hunters. They needed monsters. The prison doors swung wide. The most dangerous criminal offenders began to pour into Dirlewanger's unit. Serial killers, rapists, violent psychopaths, professional thieves. Even SS officers disciplined for excessive brutality, those whom even this extremist organization could not tolerate, now found a new home. Look at this cruel contrast through the logical structure of history. The regular German army, the Wehrmacht, wanted order. They wanted straight ranks, precise tactics, and iron discipline. However, Dirlewanger promised chaos. He knew that in anti-partisan warfare, order was a barrier. Only uncontrolled chaos could crush the resistance of those who had nothing left to lose. The SS command demanded purity. They worshipped blood, race, and the distorted moral standards of the so-called Aryan master race. Instead, Dirlewanger collected the scum of Europe. He gathered the most rotten elements, those spat out by society, turning his unit into a trash pit of humanity. This unit was no longer a military unit. It was a cult of brutality. And its high priest, Dr. Oskar Dirlewanger, began to train them in a way that no military school had ever dared to attempt. Training? No. It was a process of stripping away humanity. In the training camps in Poland and later Belarus, Dirlewanger did not teach them about encirclement tactics or how to use sophisticated maps. He taught them about fear. Dirlewanger's discipline was not built on loyalty, but on terror. He used alcohol and extreme violence to control these criminals. A bottle of schnapps in one hand, and a whip or a pistol in the other. If a soldier hesitated when receiving an execution order, he would be beaten to death or shot on the spot by his own comrades. If someone tried to escape, he would become the target for a live human hunt to serve as a training exercise for the others. Dirlewanger created a system where the only way to survive was to be more brutal than the person next to you. He blurred the line between soldier and criminal, between duty and murderous instinct. We have investigation reports from nearby Wehrmacht units. What did they write? They wrote of disgust. They saw Dirlewanger's soldiers walking around in a disheveled state, with unkempt beards and eyes as wild as beasts. No military salutes. No respect for rank. Only predatory instinct. They did not fight for Germany. They fought for sick satisfaction and for the loot that Dirlewanger allowed them to plunder freely. Records show that by this stage, the unit had changed its name to SS Sonderkommando Dirlewanger. The word Sonder special carried a deadly meaning. It implied that this unit stood outside all rules of war. They were not bound by the Geneva Convention. They were not controlled by military law. They were ghosts operating in the gray zone of morality. Dirlewanger frequently appeared among his subordinates with an eerie appearance, gaunt, cold eyes under an SS cap, always carrying a wooden cane. He did not say much. He only gave orders with short gestures. He was the embodiment of hatred. The criminals under his command worshipped him not out of respect, but because he was the only person in this world who allowed them to live according to their demonic nature. We need to ask a cold question. Why did the Nazi system allow this to exist? The answer lies in the darkness of secret files. On the Eastern Front, the war against partisans was becoming a quagmire. Regular soldiers often tended to hesitate when forced to burn down a village full of women and children. But Dirlewanger's troops did not. They saw it as entertainment. They were the solution for the problems that the white-glove generals did not want to touch directly. And so, from a small group of poachers in Oranienburg, the monster grew up. It had fangs. It had claws. The Brigade of the Damned was ready to be unleashed. Their next target was Belarus. A land of swamps, deep forests, and blood. A place where the name Dirlewanger would no longer be a secret file in a prison, but would become a permanent curse for anyone still drawing breath. Look closely at the photo taken of this unit before they boarded the train to the front. What do you see? Faces with no human light left. Only soulless corpses, controlled by a manic brain. Our investigation has only just begun to touch the outer shell of the pain. Because in the next chapter, we will witness what happens when these madmen are given ultimate power over life and death. The chaos that Dirlewanger promised is about to submerge an entire territory into eternal darkness. Belarus. 1942. People call this place the Green Hell. Vast pine forests, bottomless swamps, and a biting cold that can freeze the blood in your veins before you realize you are dying. This is the territory of the partisans. A war without front lines, where the enemy appears and disappears like ghosts behind every tree trunk. The regular Nazi German army is bogged down. They need a solution. And that solution arrived on train cars filled with the absolute scum of humanity. The Dirlewanger Brigade has set foot on the Eastern Front. Please open file number 412. These pages still reek of wood smoke and death. We don't find high-level military operational maps here. Instead, we find a list of wiped-out villages. The tactics were labeled anti-partisan warfare. A military term that sounds legitimate. But in reality, in the hands of Oskar Dirlewanger, it was a code for the largest systematic massacre of civilians in modern history. Look at the numbers. They don't know how to lie, but they know how to make one shudder. Operation Cottbus, May 1943. Dirlewanger's official report recorded 9,802 enemies destroyed. But look at the column next to it, only 492 weapons were seized. The ratio is 20 dead for every single gun found. Where does the logic of truth lie? Who were those enemies? They were farmers holding hoes, women clutching children, the elderly who didn't have time to flee into the deep forest. In Dirlewanger's world, anyone still breathing was a potential partisan. And the only way to destroy the partisans was to destroy life. Their tactics were simple and cruel. Surround the villages at dawn. Herd all the villagers into large barns. Then, use machine guns to sweep through the wooden walls before dousing them in gasoline and lighting the fire. That was not war. That was a live human hunt by licensed psychopaths. At this point, our investigation leads to a strange turn. The most horrific reports about Dirlewanger did not come from the Soviet side, but from his own allies. Wehrmacht officers, regular German soldiers already used to the harshness of war, also had to turn away in disgust. In a secret letter sent to the High Command, Major H of the 286th Division wrote, "I can no longer remain silent. Dirlewanger's unit are not soldiers. They are vultures in human form. They go where they go, and the honor of Germany dies there. They do not fight an armed enemy, they satisfy the most beastly instincts upon innocent people. Their presence is an indelible stain on our uniforms." Even an SS military court judge, Konrad Morgan, tried to prosecute Dirlewanger for crimes exceeding permission. But, this is when the Noir logic of the system began to operate ruthlessly. The crime reports reached Berlin. They lay on Himmler's desk. They lay on Hitler's desk. The crimes were undeniable. The brutality was intolerable. But, the enemy casualty figures were too impressive. Efficiency was supreme. In a total war that was slowly turning against Germany, results were more important than morality. Himmler needed those who dared to do the dirty work. And so, instead of a death sentence for the butcher, Berlin sent medals. And so, the monster continued to be fed by the blood of Belarus. Imagine you are standing in central Belarus at the end of 1943. A land once lush and green is now only a black and white painting of ash. No birds singing. No children playing. Only solitary brick chimneys standing among the ruins, like the fingers of the dead pointing straight at the sky in accusation. The ghost of Dirlewanger has passed through this place. He didn't just kill people, He killed the soul of the land. He turned villages into nameless mass graves. In Belarus, they say that even the grass does not bother to grow on the roads where this brigade once marched. Oskar Dirlewanger was no longer just a military commander. He had become a symbol of ultimate degradation. In the deep forests of the East, he had built a kingdom of madness, where he was the Lord and the criminals under him were apostles of death. We wonder, why did no one stop him? The answer is bitter. The system did not stop him because the system needed him. When an empire decides to follow the path of the devil, it needs a real devil to lead the way. Dirlewanger was not a mistake of the system, he was its most logical result. The clues are clear. The portrait of a killer is complete. But the horror does not stop here. Because when the Eastern Front collapsed, this wild beast did not retreat into the shadows. It turned its head toward the west. Toward Warsaw. Where the brutality of Belarus was only considered a warm-up exercise for a destruction on a larger scale, more devastating, and many times more painful. The oil lamp in the archive is running low. But the story of the butcher has only just entered its darkest chapter. August 1944. Warsaw is no longer a city. It is a massive, open-air crematorium. When the Polish people rose up in the Warsaw Uprising, they fought for freedom, for honor, and for the last hope before the darkness closed in. But in response to that hope, Hitler sent the worst he had in hand. He did not send elite armored divisions. He sent the Dirlewanger Brigade. Investigation file number August 1944. Look at these grainy photographs. The black and white frames, burned at the corners, record a city dissolving itself into ash. Among the ruins of the Walla district, we see shadows. Those are not soldiers in combat. They are beasts strolling among the corpses. Warsaw should have been a battlefield between soldiers. Instead, it became a slaughterhouse. Focus on the Walla district. In less than a week, from August 5th to the 12th, an unimaginable crime took place. Dirlewanger and his henchmen did not discriminate. Women, children, patients in hospitals, priests in churches, all were herded into open lots and wiped out by machine guns. There are reports that make the reader's hands shake. The soldiers under Dirlewanger did not just kill, they played with death. They used children as human shields, they burned the wounded alive right inside the hospitals. The estimated number in Walla is over 40,000 dead in just a few days. That is a density of slaughter that even the concentration camps could hardly match. At this point, our investigation reaches the peak of madness. While the blood of the people of Warsaw was still flowing in the gutters, in Berlin, they were preparing a ceremony. On September 30, 1944, Oskar Dirlewanger was awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross, the highest glory of the German military. Stop and reflect on this absurdity. A man who by every rule of a military court should have been shot for crimes against humanity, was instead honored as a national hero. This is not just the decay of an individual, this is the total collapse of a civilization. When the medal was pinned to the chest of the butcher, it officially confirmed that in Hitler's world, crime was merit. But even in the thickest darkness, there was resistance of conscience. The investigation records sharp ideological confrontations right on the Warsaw battlefield. The real soldiers of the Hermann Göring Division or regular Wehrmacht units looked at the Dirlewanger Brigade with ultimate disgust. They called it the Army of the Damned. There were arguments, even guns drawn between regular officers and Dirlewanger. Soldiers of honor could not accept fighting alongside rapists and serial killers. But all resistance was suppressed by superiors. The order from Berlin was very clear. Use every measure to level Warsaw. And Dirlewanger was that every measure. Noir logic appears more bitter than ever, history records dates, but blood never truly dries. When we look at the photos of the ruins of Warsaw, we do not just see bricks and stones. We see the failure of humanity. Dirlewanger did not win the uprising, he simply erased the place where the uprising occurred. He turned a civilized capital into a graveyard without headstones. Oskar Dirlewanger walked through the burning city with the smile of a man who had found his own paradise, a paradise built on the ultimate pain of his fellow man. In Warsaw, he no longer needed to hide his nature. He was the embodiment of pure destruction. But, darkness does not exist forever. As the black smoke of Warsaw began to dissipate, the roar of the Soviet Red Army's tank tracks began to boom from the other side of the Vistula River. Destiny is coming. Those who have sown chaos are about to face a chaos many times greater. The file on Warsaw closes here, with pages stained with ash. But the story of the butcher's grim truth still has one final chapter. A chapter about the fall, about footsteps fleeing in the dark, and about a quiet but haunting retribution. History can be covered up, but the ghosts of WWII are still there, standing in the ruins, waiting for the truth to be revealed. The year 1945. The final lights of the Third Reich go out. Berlin burns. Those who once called themselves supermen are now only little mice fleeing in the sewers of history. In that chaotic crowd, a gaunt figure, wearing ragged civilian clothes, tries to hide in the shadows of the Althausen region. Oskar Dirlewanger. The man who once spread horror across Eastern Europe is now tasting the flavor of fear. But the darkness cannot hide him forever. June 1945. Dirlewanger was arrested by the French army. He was thrown into a prison in Altshausen. And here, history begins to blur. There was no grand international trial. No camera flashes from the press. No pages-long sentence read before justice. Dirlewanger's death took place in the terrifying silence of stone walls. Unofficial reports recount that, when the Polish guards, those who had witnessed their homeland being trampled, realized who the gaunt man in the cell was, they did not wait for justice to be executed. He was beaten repeatedly. He died in pain and solitude on the night of June 7, 1945. The demon died in the darkness, taking the most horrific secrets down to a nameless grave. Justice is a heavy word. But in 1945, justice was silent. The grim truth is that there was no official apology from him. No remorse. The victims in Belarus, in Warsaw, never got to see their tormentor stand in the dock. That man is gone. That brigade has disbanded. But the ghosts never lie. We stand here, turning back these file pages, not to stir up hatred, but to face a haunting question. What is the true nature of man? When social order collapses, when absolute power is given to the worst, and when immunity from crime is promised. How many other Dirlewangers are sleeping peacefully in every dark corner of humanity? History is written by the victors. But the Noir archive is different. It remembers the truth. The truth. The cold and grim truth. The oil lamp has gone out. The file is closed. But in the darkness, the echo of Warsaw is still there. Remember, the darkness never goes away, it only waits for the next butcher to pick up the torch of destruction.